Hello and welcome to this week's book review for the G24 group. For this month, we've been reading Charles Spurgeon's The Soul Winner. And Charles Spurgeon, he died 1892 at the age of 57. But despite the very short life he lived, he was a very prolific writer and one of Britain's most reputable preacher of all times. Some have called him the Prince of Preachers. And so his book is in that sense a classic. And of course, everything Charles Spurgeon writes, there is almost a sense in which he writes as though he knows that part of his readership will be church leaders. And so you could get that feel while reading the book. But beyond that, I'm also trying to see how we can tease out some of the things. I'm reviewing chapters 10 to 12. But to make it a bit personal. So chapter 10 is titled How to Encourage Our People to Win Souls. And again, that's a chapter that was written more or less for church leaders, the way it was styled. But I think it also works for every single one of us because, of course, the whole idea of being involved in winning souls is not meant to just be for church leaders. As we have seen from the previous 9 chapters that have already been covered, it's for all of us. And by implication, we are not just winning souls for the sake of winning souls. The mandate Jesus gave, if we could call it that, the Great Commission, as we tend to say, is going into the world, or even more literally, as you go into the world, make disciples of nations. So in other words, we're not just making converts, we're making disciples, which means at some point, those people that we are winning to Christ will also go on to win others to Christ. So how do you encourage the people that you're discipling to also become disciples? That's one way to look at it if we want to bring it into our personal context. And the idea is one of the key ideas from that particular chapter is to stress that it takes time. It takes time. You will have to do life with these people. You will have to be together in becoming more like Jesus for them to begin to learn from how you're modeling how to do this. So this is not just some formula or structured syllabus in which you follow 7 steps and then you become a soul winner that gets other people to also win souls. No, it takes time. And that's one of the main things he emphasized in that chapter. And then there is no set rule. Then it says you can begin with 1 or 2 people. In a church context, for example, if all of the church are not like keen about evangelizing, he's suggesting start with 1 or 2 people. But also in our own personal context, you don't want to start by discipling 17 people at a time. Focus on 1 or 2 people that you really want to take under your wings. You really want to draw them into your world. You really want to be there with them in very unofficial, informal context. You really want to intentionally do life with them. And then, of course, he emphasized that we must know that the devil will fight this. The devil will oppose it. So they expect that opposition. And the antidote to that is prayer. So persist in prayer and keep praying as you continue to model this. And when I keep saying modeling this, what I simply mean is just keep being a Christian in a way that, someone else can see. It says, Jesus, Matthew 5:16, let your light so shine that others can see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That's a model for discipleship. You do you in a way that is obvious that you're not just doing you frivolously. You are doing you as the you that is on the journey to becoming more like Christ, and others can learn from that and learn how you do it and replicate that. In chapter 11, it talked about favorable soul winning atmosphere. And the whole idea is to say that whether you're looking at this from a church context or even from a personal life context, this whole idea of soul winning, it works best when the atmosphere is right. And that is something we'll work hard to create. That's something we'll work hard to preserve, of course, by the empowerment of the Spirit. And one key thing I think I took away from that chapter is the idea of being prepared. And so you want to be prepared for opportunities that might arise for you to share the gospel with someone. You gave the example of someone that had Bible verses that are apt for different possibilities that could come up in such a conversation, and they have those Bible verses written in the inner cover of their Bible or something like that, and so they can always reference those. That's someone that is prepared. But your own preparation might look different. It might just be having tracts handy, in which case, even if you're not able to go all the way to talk and get into a conversation, you can give someone something that would do the conversing on your behalf, or at least pass on the message or sow a seed in that regards with them. And then chapter 12 is titled How to Raise the Dead. And that's something we all like to do, won't we? But it kind of approached that, especially from the approach of parenting, as a parent that wants to, is reminding us that our children are dead, in the sense of tenet number 2, the utter depravity of the human nature, um, and the necessity for repentance and regeneration and all that. So it's coming from, first and foremost, we must realize, especially in a family setting, that our children, even if we are Christians as parents and true believers, your children are not, your Christianity is not biologically inheritable. It's not hereditary. You want to labor to back them into the family of God. And that won't just happen by bringing them to church every Sunday. That's helpful. That's a good way to begin to water the ground. But it's basically reminding us that this is going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of effort. And he's zoomed in on the passage in which Elisha raised the dead, when he raised the woman of the Shunammite woman that has housed Elisha, given him accommodation. We know the story. And then eventually, they found that the woman didn't have a child, prayed for her, she had a child, the boy grew up, and then at some point, as a young lad, the guy died. And then the woman brought him back to Elisha, put the boy on Elisha's bed, and came to tell him, fix it, in a manner of speaking. And the process in which Elisha does that became how Charles Spurgeon is teasing out some points for us to emphasize here.